start hearing the U.S. helicopters or airplanes coming in, the question is, will that loyalty remain? That's the big question right now.
At the top of the hour now, it's 0900 hours GMT. Maybe a good point to recap and bring you up to speed with all the breaking news that's been coming out of Venezuela in the last couple of hours or so. So here's where we're at. The government the government of Venezuela, that is, accusing the United States of attacking civilian and military installations in multiple states. The Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, well, he's now declared a national emergency, and all of that coming after what we've seen in this night of explosions, at least 7 hitting the capital, Caracas, accompanied by low-flying aircraft. Explosions also reported in the southern parts of the city near a major military base. There are reports of airports also coming under fire. And the U.S. has been increasing pressure, of course, on President Nicolas Maduro's government over the last few weeks and months, accusing it of links to drug trafficking. Venezuela's government has reacted to the explosions, as I mentioned. It issued a statement in which it said
their own Drug Enforcement Administration says that simply isn't true.
At this point, does that indicate, again, don't want to ask you questions that out of the country and his wife?
First of all, I can't tell you who's running the show at this very moment. There are people. There is the head of the National Assembly, with the equivalent of the vice president in another country. There are people who could theoretically take the place of Nicolas Maduro. But the real question is, has the whole thing collapsed and crumbled right now, or is it still standing on 1, 2, 3, or 4 legs? The opposition, what would they do? I think that's what you're discussing. It's not only clear that Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo González have been working on a plan ever since the elections that they say were stolen from them, and they went into exile. Well, he went into exile. She went into hiding in Venezuela until she left the country to pick up the Nobel Prize just very recently. They are presumably going to argue that they won the election fair and square, and now that that is the government, that is the legitimate government of Venezuela, and so therefore they will now be able to come and occupy those seats, or the seat that Edmundo González won in an election. We saw something like this very similarly in Haiti many years ago, when President Aristide won an election. He was forced into exile. The United States invaded, and then they brought him back. Then they took him out again. This idea that a legitimate president or government is forced into exile with the help of the United States, is allowed to come back, and then that's that. That, I think, is the big picture from the point of view of the opposition, including members of the opposition who do not agree with the idea of a U.S. military strike being the cause of this return to a more democratic government, which is what they all say they've been fighting for all this time. However, it's a done deal now. President Maduro is out, and the fact that the United States can come in and nab him and take him out of the country, I think is a shock. It's a shock to me. It's a shock, I'm sure, to so many leaders in Latin America. And I disagree with some of the things that are being said here, that many Latin American countries, because they're conservative, are happy about this. I don't think it's a matter. I think only the most extreme governments, like the government of Argentina, can applaud this openly, at least, because it is a violation of the national sovereignty of the country. And as I said before, this is like going back to the past in the region, when the United States used to invade regularly, especially the countries of Central America and the Caribbean, when they didn't like the government that was in power. And it's what we talked about earlier as well, the sort of neo-Monroe doctrine, this doctrine that said that the United States, that Latin America was for the United States. The United States had the hegemony in that region, and that nobody else could be in there. And so that is, I think, something that is going to really, really shock many of the governments in the region, whether they want to say so or not. And I never expected that he would be sort of pulled out of Venezuela. and taken away. Where he's gone now, we don't know. Is he going to be taken to Guantanamo? My inkling is that he's going to go to the United States. As she had said, the mention of law enforcement, it does sort of smack of trial based on accusations that he is a drug trafficker. Perhaps he's something like that, like we did with Noriega, with General Noriega, which was the last time that the United States carried out a military strike, or an invasion in this case, of a country, which was in December of 1989. The United States invaded Panama, took out Noriega, took him back to the United States and put him in jail, and he was never released.
You're right, it is a shock, Lucia. I think what will be helpful at this point is let's take a pause to digest what exactly has been happening. And this is where we're at. The US President, Donald Trump, has released a statement on Truth Social, you can see it there, saying that he's confirmed the US has carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela. That explains what we've been reporting the last few hours, and as you can see in the box above me, of these explosions in Venezuela. But then President Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country. He goes on to say that the operation was done in conjunction with US law enforcement, and says there'll be a news conference later today at 11 a.m. Now, all of this happening after what we've been reporting of explosions happening in Caracas, also in a few other areas, but explosions at a military airbase, at a military fortification and base for Fortuna, where the Ministry of Defense is headquartered, attacks and strikes on the mausoleum of Hugo Chavez, the late leader of Venezuela, attacks apparently on the residence of the defense minister, explosions reported too at the international airport in Caracas. So all of that was building up. Then this report, this statement by the US president, Venezuelan president is no longer in Venezuela. American forces have taken him. Let's go to Javier Farge. Javier, I guess the question now is there somebody, the status, that can fill the void and command the respect and the following of the security forces at this point within Venezuela?
Well, his staunch allies within the armed forces were Vladimir Padrino and Diosdado Cabello. They are in charge of the armed forces. It remains to be seen whether the armed forces will be prepared. Do we know what their status
is? Do we know whether they were targeted?
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, all we can say is that now, after you have given us this surprising statement by Donald Trump, don't forget that Donald Trump announced that they were going to start CIA operations within the territory of Venezuela. We don't know whether the removal of Maduro has been the result of those operations. It will be interesting to know that. We have to wait until his press conference to decide whether that was the case. The problem is that Maduro has always represented he's been the heir of Hugo Chavez. If Hugo Chavez was in power at the moment, it wouldn't have been an invasion. So it depends to be seen whether they are going to have to get together and find a leader, or find somebody who might replace Nicolas Maduro. Now, we don't know whether regime change is going to be the next step by President Trump. Maybe they will install Edmundo Gonzalez, who lost the election of July last year. Whether they are going to negotiate with the opposition, a transition government, or they are going to negotiate with the armed forces and the remains of the Maduro government, a transition to a new situation, a new democratic process in Venezuela. So everything is up to speculation. If Maduro has been removed, the government in Venezuela will be headless, totally headless, because he's been the person who's been, the commander-in-chief, if you like, of the so-called Bolivarian revolution. Without him, they will be a bit headless and will have to decide who's going to take over. We don't know whether, if he's being arrested, he's been taken out of the country, who remains in charge? The vice president, the defense minister, I mean, the president of the National Assembly, for example. We don't really know what the situation is at the moment. The only person who has confirmed that Maduro has been removed is Trump himself. All the media organizations are not really reporting that yet. So we don't really know. It's very difficult at this stage to negotiate an opinion or a position in relation to what's happening in Venezuela. Because Maduro has been the main protagonist of all this saga. As president, as so-called, and there's no proof that that's the case, of a head of some kind of drug dealing gang, which is a ridiculous accusation because everybody knows that he's not. Now Maduro out of power. Whether the others will negotiate a transition to a different government, maybe a transition between this government and a new election or something like that, or the opposition leaders will be put in place in replacing Maduro. We mustn't forget as well that whoever is in charge, let's assume for the moment that the opposition will get away with having a leader in charge. The armed forces, many people in the armed forces are still loyal to the Chavez project. So whoever runs the government in Venezuela from the opposition will have to deal with that fact.
Javier,
that fact
according to the Constitution, it should be the vice president, right? Delcy Rodriguez.
Yes. Yeah, Delcy Rodriguez. Delcy Rodriguez is very popular. She has a different post in the government in Venezuela. She's been minister in different positions. She's been a very vocal supporter of President Maduro. That's probably the case that Delcy Rodriguez will actually take over as vice president. But I would imagine that the government of Trump will not be happy with letting the Maduro structure in place in Venezuela. There might be some kind of negotiation for transition.
Alessandro, there was reaction from around the region and criticism. I imagine now with the announcement by Donald Trump that the US has actually taken the president out of the country, that this is going to send a bigger wave of shock throughout the region.
Absolutely. I think that, again, recalling what Lucia Newman was just saying earlier, everybody is in shock with how this night is developing. I think nobody would have expected the U.S. to be able to capture President Maduro if indeed what President Trump has posted is true. And the big question is obviously where he will be taken now. Just earlier in December, for example, the Colombian Foreign Minister Rosa Villavicencio had said that Colombia would be willing to receive Maduro if he decided to step down from the presidency. And adding that Colombia always was available to support dialogue and diplomatic negotiation, trying to diffuse regional tensions. But obviously now that doesn't seem to be a possibility, especially given the fact of how critical the government of Gustavo Petro has been of Donald Trump's actions in the Caribbean and in a number of issues, including the treatment of migrants in the United States. I haven't seen any comments so far, right before we were talking about this announcement of part of Trump, but I'm sure those will start to trickle in very soon.
Sisi in Caracas, are we hearing anything about who's in charge? Any sign of any transition or movement to fill a void after the report or the statement there from the US president that Nicolas Maduro has been taken out the country? Sisi de Flavis.
Yeah, so after that statement from Trump, all we have seen so far from the Venezuelan government is a video from Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the defense minister. He essentially just published a video from a few minutes, and the rough translation would be something along the lines of saying Venezuela was targeted. At this moment, certain places have been targeted, which we've talked about throughout the night. And obviously, he's condemning the attack from the U.S. and saying it's a violation of the sovereignty and asking the people to kind of stand with the country. However, I do know now this just means for the people, like there's uncertainty of who's going to rule. There has been talks about the VP Delcy, and I know that was part of Maduro's kind of like exit strategy. He did request if that to be one of the clauses, like if I do leave, I want Delcy to be the president in charge. However, we need to consider that the current government, or let's say the Maduro regime, was not a legitimate government. There was an election last year in which Maduro lost exponentially. Edmundo Gonzalez won the election. However, the dictatorship was not going to step down even through a democratic process, because over the last 27 years, Venezuela hasn't been a democratic country. So regardless of the election's result, the government stayed in power, including Chavez. Then Chavez passed away and Maduro just kind of stepped in. Even though he was not as popular as Chavez and he did not win the elections, he continued to stay in power. So last year, there were some elections that were not respected. The Venezuelan votes was not respected as well, and Maduro just continued in power. So technically, Maduro was not a legitimate president, although he stayed in power. So a regime change or a change in who's going to lead the country now that Maduro is not in power is still very uncertain. Whether the Chavismo and then the government in place just places one of their own and continues this legacy, let's call it, El Chavismo, the same way Maduro stepped in. It's a possibility. However, there could also be the opposition coming in, or there could be an election, but it is definitely going to be an uncertain few days in Venezuela, maybe months. But at the moment, Vladimir, they didn't even mention anything about Maduro being captured. So in terms of the Venezuelan government, there's still uncertainty on what's going to happen in the next few days.
All right. Let's go to Paul Dobson. He's a journalist and political analyst, joins us now from Merida in Venezuela. In a situation like this, Paul, where there is some kind of transition underway, we usually see formations, movements by certain military units. Are we seeing any sign of that?
Yes, well, there's a lot of uncertainty right now here in Venezuela. Many people are just starting to wake up and seeing the news around the rest of the country. Just close to where I am now, a local woke up and started crying and shouting out that finally Maduro has gone with great joy. And we're still waiting to dissect the information and see exactly what the truth is and what the rumors are.
You mentioned some public reaction. Take us through, what are we seeing from people at this point after, so many years of the rule by Nicolas Maduro, the controversy over elections? Are we seeing people, for the most part, being very restrained and cautious and waiting to see what happens, or expressing themselves in more outright ways?
There's a great amount of built-up anxiety in Venezuela. Most Venezuelans who have not emigrated have been struggling and surviving on $1 a month wages now for 3 or 4 years. And I think it's fair to say that the majority of the population oppose this current government. But of course, in the current situations in Venezuela, where terrorism charges are handed out to anyone criticizing the government, most people will have kept these desires to see a change in government in a very private environment in their home and would have not spoken about this publicly. So if Donald Trump's Nicolas Maduro has been kidnapped alongside his wife, illegally kidnapped, if this proves to be, then I think we will see a great outburst from many sectors of Venezuelan society of joy and contentment. However, it's also important to point out that there are huge swathes of the Venezuelan society which don't necessarily equate opposition to Maduro's economic policies and his government with support for a foreign military action like we are currently seeing. There are important sectors of the society which will oppose both the Maduro government for the reasons I've explained, but also will fervently oppose these attacks on Caracas, will oppose the illegal attacks on Venezuela's sovereignty and the attacks on the Venezuelan political system.
All right, Leo, thanks so much. Paul, let's go to Christopher Sabatini. He's a senior research fellow for Latin America, US and North America program at Chatham House. He joins us now from London. This is, I don't know if unprecedented is the right word, but this is quite an unusual course of action for one country to fly in, take the president and his wife out.
It is. We've seen this build up for a long time. It's been going on for 6 months now. The narrative around it, the justification around it, even the objectives has changed. Originally, this was about, according to Donald Trump, about taking out narcotics traffickers, as we saw with the explosion of the 30-plus boats, 35 boats, then starving the Nicolas Maduro government, and now we're seeing this smash and grab operation that removes him and quite likely takes him to the U.S. to stand trial. It is unprecedented. In fact, if there's any sort of analogous situation, one could argue, although it's not a good one for many reasons, was Osama bin Laden. He was killed, of course, but also he had a far more serious charge against him than Nicolas Maduro. But I think this goes hand in hand with this very slow ramp up that's been going on now for, quite frankly, since Donald Trump's first term, when he tried to remove Nicolas Maduro by supporting a fictional shadow government of alleged
different, though,
Democrats.
isn't it? Maduro is a head of state. You know, however people feel about the elections, obviously Osama bin Laden wasn't. He's been taken out alive. So to your point, I'm not sure where the historical parallel lies in this. Would one assume that if the US had embarked on something like this, we should assume that they've got some kind of transition plan in place? Should we expect to see the opposition figures, the US try to move them into power? I mean...
Well, first of all, my point wasn't to draw a strict, for the United States, this is comparable. This is an operation that could take place as it did in Pakistan with Osama bin Laden, and now here. They believe there's precedent on this. Now, whether there's a transition government in place, we really don't know. It's quite likely, frankly, that given the level of security around Maduro and his sort of caution before that because he's been moving residences over time, this was somewhat of an inside job, which would indicate there may be some sort of alignment of forces within the regime that is ready to assume government on some basis, whether it's interim or not. Whether this will be sufficient to please the United States, whether this will even be a significant break with all of the things the U.S. has alleged about Venezuela and Maduro in particular, some of them being true, that he stole an election, that he's engaged in narcotics trafficking, that he's an autocrat, that there are some 800 political prisoners inside Venezuela prisoners. Those are all true. Whether an interim government will address those concerns and move the country towards democratic elections, we really don't know. Frankly, if it was an inside job, I would doubt that would be the case. We don't know whether they have a transition plan in place, but we don't know even if they do whether it's workable, and also whether the United States will support it. But one thing is clear, by having done this, the U.S. now owns this. Any transition, any political developments, any conflict that results now is on the U.S.'s doorstep. This is not just a smash and grab operation where it can then clean up and say, we're done here. The U.S. now basically owns what the outcome is from this point forward.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your comments. Let's bring our viewers up to speed with what we've been hearing from the US President, Donald Trump. And he tweeted on Truth Social that the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with US law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, I believe we should be able to go now to Shihab Ratansi. He joins us from outside Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. So he said details to follow. I guess any details coming at this point?
I'm actually in Washington, D.C., but you're right, Donald Trump is down in Mar-a-Lago. The only other really granular details that we have came from that CBS report a few hours ago that said, in fact, Trump had given the U.S. military the green light to conduct these strikes in Venezuela days ago. And U.S. officials told CBS News that the U.S. was ready on Christmas Day, but airstrikes in Nigeria against alleged Islamic State targets took precedence. And the days following Christmas opened up more potential strike windows, but the operation was postponed partly due to weather. U.S. military wanted weather conditions that were advantageous to mission success. And throughout the last several hours, we've seen video on social media of helicopters that some identified as potentially American helicopters over the skies of Caracas. We have no way of confirming that yet, but certainly this would all seem to be in keeping with the operation that Donald Trump is describing. This was what the plan that the opposition leader, Corina Machado, had allegedly run by Trump, months ago in January, or at least through to Marco Rubio, who who really elevated his status with the administration from secretary.
For Venezuela, the events of the past 18 hours or so.
All right, chat, I am here. Let's hop onto the screen. Everybody, yeah, this title needs to be changed because I don't agree. U.S. attacks Venezuela. Maduro captured, flown to Miami. Or no, sorry, it was like New York. Let's say kidnapped. Fine. I actually agree with that. Kidnapped and flown to New York. That is all right. Welcome on in, everybody. Good morning. When we made our predictions, I said, I don't remember exactly what I said. Did I say airstrikes? But I said they're not going to go to war. And then I said wish casting because I knew I was wrong. I knew I was fucking wrong. I put wish casting in parentheses because I knew I was fucking wrong. You said bomb, no ground. What exactly did I say? Let me see if I can find it. Internet. Did it save? Oh no, it got cleared. Somebody would have to screenshot it. I didn't screenshot chat. Fuck. Did anybody screenshot? You might have to just pull up the VOD. And I think the cope is that we were all in is because this has been a slow grow. But the reality is this was telegraphed for a while. The truth is that this is an important lesson for people to understand. It's an important lesson for people to understand is that the United States of America, let me see if I could, oh, it looks like the CIA. Okay, so I predicted U.S. keeps bombing Venezuela, no ground invasion, CIA agents caught, no regime change, true wish casting. Now, as far as I understand, there isn't a ground invasion. They did a special operation strike. In fact, let's catch up to what took place, and then we'll do analysis more. Thank you, chatter, for the link.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has just posted a statement on Truth Social. This is the first public acknowledgement by the United States. I will read it for you, just seeing this pop up on my phone as we speak while texting back and forth with senior advisors at the White House.
What the fuck?
From the President of the United States. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow, according to the president. There will be a news conference, he says, today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. He then punctuates it, as he often does, with thanks for your attention to this matter. It is signed by the president. So again, I want to repeat two of the key sentences in there. He confirms that the U.S. carried out this large-scale strike against Venezuela, and he says that its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. So, according to the President of the United States, Nicolas Maduro is no longer on the ground in Venezuela. It leaves open a bit of a vacuum there in terms of leadership. It's not entirely clear who is effectively running that country at this time. I just want to get your immediate reaction.
It is clear who constitutionally is running the country. It's not clear if some sort of actual coup has taken place in addition to capturing Maduro, because every government has a procedure for continuity should the leader die. That's just basic shit. Although, I mean, I gotta be honest with you, chat, kind of profoundly incompetent. You know, one of the things about Trump, and you gotta give him credit for this, is he picks his enemies wisely. You know, part of this kind of shit is if you're going to do might makes right, then you pick on people that are incompetent. Right? Because these helicopters could have been shot down with shoulder-mounted rocket launchers. They're that low. And to not have the presidential palace absolutely bristling with shoulder-mounted rocket launchers, I mean, that's not that expensive, right? So that's pretty embarrassing. You know, that's pretty embarrassing.
He wasn't crying uncle. And now it seems he was arrested. An extraordinary development.
Now, Richard,
started out with.
Now, there almost certainly was corruption of the presidential guard. There was almost certainly corruption of the presidential guard, and that goes without saying.
Successfully launched, carried out, as he says, what was a large-scale strike, attacks in and around Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. Beyond that, he says that the U.S. has captured, and flown out of the country Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And Richard, I bring this up because it's significant for a variety of reasons. Nicolas Maduro, only a matter of days ago, said in a new interview that he was open to negotiating with Washington to combat drug trafficking, the first sign that this pressure campaign was taking its toll. The questions that it raises now are, was there any resistance by Maduro when this took place? Was this in some way negotiated with those around him? Those are questions we have on the ground. As you say, the U.S. swept in and did this under the veil of darkness. It took place very quickly. We don't know what may have occurred on the ground right now, but it raises a lot of real questions about what, if any, conversations did exist in any form with Nicolas Maduro, or if this was the first contact when, in effect, the United States military was knocking on his door and sweeping up him and his wife and taking them out of the country.
Panama too. Noriega, those who remember the story. He was accused of being a narco trafficker, refused to leave. U.S. forces swept in and grabbed him. To answer some of the questions, I know for the last several months there have been contacts through intermediaries with Maduro's inner circle to try to convince him to leave the country. He was not interested. He was resisting. This pressure campaign has been escalating. First with the boats, then with President Trump declaring him a narco-terrorist, then all of the U.S. military buildup in the region, the aircraft carrier strike groups, the submarines, the drones, aircraft. Then, shortly before New Year's, a land strike allegedly carried out by the CIA. Very few details about what was hit then. And now, overnight, a capture operation. You don't do a capture operation without attacking some military sites, because you need to clear the airspace, you need to clear away air defenses, you need to protect the helicopters and the troops that are going in to remove the person you're trying to arrest. So the U.S., President Trump, just decided to pull a Panama II for New Year's and effect regime change in Venezuela. An extraordinary development. And you asked, was this coordinated? It could only have been coordinated with at least some people who turned on Maduro, because definitely people knew where he was. They knew where his family was. It sounds like he.
I think the main thing is you can kind of see how Maduro isn't a dictator, because if a dictator would say, hey, if you betray me, I'll go and kill your entire family. You know what I mean? Like, that's what makes a dictator, right? Is they don't operate according to any kind of constraint. They do collective punishment. They do stuff like that, right? So Maduro, like, these people get bribed and they don't feel like there's any threat that anything is going to be happening to them, because they see so many traitors walking around without getting any kind of consequences and profiting. So when you see traitors walking around and profiting, I mean, it results in more treason. All right. Let's see what they were saying on CNN. Trump is going to be Trump interview on Fox News. Let's Trump speech. Let me go ahead and type this, because it's going to be happening here in 20 minutes. Obviously, by going after Maduro, it doesn't end the Venezuelan government. However, it is going to sow chaos, and it's going to induce a lot of people who are enemies to the regime domestically to kind of jump up, because they see the U.S. bombing. So they think that, who's going to want any strong group, who may not have been able to beat the regime, but now they have American air support. That's going to be pretty tough to beat.
And I'm Victor Blackwell in Atlanta. The breaking news this morning: President Trump says the U.S. carried out large-scale strikes on Venezuela overnight. He says its president, Nicolas Maduro.
Okay, let's go ahead and let's pull up the Fox News video of Trump talking. He went on Fox News. Jeez.
It's 9 a.m. on the East Coast, and if you're just joining us this morning, we have major breaking news. Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro has been captured by U.S. forces. President Trump confirming the large-scale U.S. military operation overnight.
Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming Maduro and his wife face drug and weapons charges in the U.S. And about 20 minutes ago, Vice President J.D. Vance revealing President Trump offered
Democrats
Maduro
are gonna cheer
multiple off-ramps.
All this comes after explosions rocked the capital of Caracas and surrounding states early this morning. President Trump is expected to hold a news conference from Mar-a-Lago, 11 a.m. this morning. But first, he joins us now by phone. And let's get right to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. President Trump, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning.
So you've had quite a busy evening. Tell us about it.
It was slightly busy, I would say. It was very dark all over, especially in Venezuela. The team did an incredible job. They rehearsed and practiced like nobody's ever seen. And I was told by real military people that there's no other country on earth that can do such a maneuver. If you would have seen what happened, I mean, I watched it literally like I was watching a television show. And if you would have seen the speed, the violence, you know, they say that, the speed, the violence, they use that term. It was an amazing thing, an amazing job that these people did. There's nobody else could have done anything like it.
You're at Mar-a-Lago right now. How were you able to watch this?
Well, we watched it from a room. We had a room, and we watched it, and we watched every aspect of it. We were surrounded by lots of people, including generals, and they knew everything that was happening, and it was very complex, extremely complex, the whole maneuver, the landings, the number of aircraft, which were a massive number, the number of helicopters, a different type of helicopters, different type of fighter jets. We had a fighter jet for every possible situation. And they just broke in, and they broke into places that were not really able to be broke into, you know, steel doors that were put there for just this reason, and they got taken out in a matter of seconds. I've never seen anything like it, actually.
And you were able to watch this in real time.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've done some pretty good ones in other parts of the world, okay? I've done some pretty good ones, but I've never seen anything like this. I was able to watch it in real time, and I watched every aspect of it, and I listened to the communication between, you know, where we were in Florida and out in the field in Venezuela. And it was amazing to see the professionalism, the quality of leadership, the professionalism. General Raisin Kane is fantastic. Don't forget, we did another one not so long ago. It was called the knocking out of the Iranian nuclear threat, the nuclear power. And that was unbelievable what they did there. And this is something that, gee, I don't know, it's amazing. And to have a few injuries, but no death on our side is really amazing.
Mr. President, critics will say that strong action can risk escalation, but history has shown us that weakness can truly invite chaos. And this military operation clearly sends a message to our adversaries around the world, China, Iran, Russia, that we are no longer the weak administration that we had for 4 years under former President Biden, who tolerated narco-terrorism. What is next for the United States and Venezuela?
Well, we're very strong, and very importantly, if you look at drugs through the oceans, through the seas, they're down 97%. That's the boats. It's sort of related to this, as you know. The drugs are way down, and it's getting very, very tough. It's a whole different look. We have a whole different country. We have a country now that's respected. We have a country. I built the military in my first term, and they gave a little chunk of it away, but it was a lot. But it was a little chunk relative to what we built. But they gave it to Afghanistan so stupidly. It was one of the. Compare this to Afghanistan, where we were a laughing stock all over the world. We're not a laughing stock anymore. No, we have the greatest military in the world by far. We have the greatest equipment, military equipment in the world by far. And you had to see this in real time. You had to see this, the professionalism and the bravery, everything about it. And you almost couldn't hold them back. It was like they wanted to go so badly. And most people would have said, I'll take a pass. I know that Charlie would have wanted to go because Charlie's a very brave person. But I know a lot of other people would have said, I think I'll pass on this one. let's watch it on television. So it's been amazing to see how good they were, how professional they were, how incredible the equipment we have is. I mean, the level of equipment and to see how it worked so perfectly. And, you know, if you compare this to...
You know, I'll pause it here, chat, and I'll just say, like, I think one of the worst delusions that people have, especially on the left, is that because somebody is doing evil, therefore they are incompetent, or that evil can never pay off. You know, this is like one of the kind of dumb assumptions that seems to be made. And that's part of why we have such an anarchist style left in America, because it's kind of childlike. You know, the Nazis were very effective at organizing military forces and fighting battles. Like, you know, there is, just because someone's evil doesn't mean they're going to be incompetent or easily overcome. And I think the lesson that needs to be learned is the United States of America is entering a fascist paradigm because capitalism is under threat. Whether it's the rise of China, global climate change, the demographic collapse of the West, there are some major crises for the imperial core. And one of the methods of trying to staunch that bleeding is direct, high-risk aggression. And it'll continue as long as there aren't consequences for it. And, you know, I think resting on your laurels or believing in these international institutions, the United States has not indicated that they're going to follow any of the strictures or laws that they've passed. There's really no telling what could be done. And I think people need to, like, wake up to that reality.
Attacks on Iran over the years with, you know, helicopters crashing into each other. The whole thing was a mess. The Jimmy Carter situation, which was a mess. And every other situation compared to this, nobody's ever seen like this. The Iranian attack, knocking out their nuclear power, was big. We had peace in the Middle East, and we have it. Without that, you could never have peace in the Middle East. We knocked them out, and look what's happening now to Iran, but we knocked it out. That was, it could not have been better, and this could not have been better. I don't even know which is, these are both really important. If you think about equal and importance, I wonder how it's going to be rated, but knocking out the nuclear power of, think of it, they were ready, they were within 2 months, they would have been a nuclear power. Comparing that to this in a certain different way, I think this might have been actually more complex.
Well, it's interesting.
That was something that was amazing.
It's interesting, Mr. President. We've looked, our own Lucas Tomlinson, our reporter here. I don't know if you knew this intentionally, but the capture of Maduro and his wife coincides with the 6th anniversary of your taking out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Qasem Soleimani. Interestingly, it's six years after. But let me ask you a question, Mr. President. Because
by the way, that was the third thing, and we have a fourth. We got Soleimani. We have taken out so many. Look at what we did to the leader of ISIS, who's no longer with us, right? And everybody was after for 20 years, and we got him. We've done a lot, but this was something, maybe because it's fresh in our minds, you know, because again, the Iranian situation was so big, knocking that out, and the B-2 bomber, every single missile hit its target, and the target was an air shaft.
Right. Dark
at night. Think of that. Dark at night, no moon. You couldn't see a thing. And every missile went right through that air shaft and just obliterated the place. So that was amazing. And this was amazing.
I wonder, Mr. President, though, I want to ask you because from your Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that the message is pretty clear. The drug trafficking must stop. So was this operation a message that you're sending to Mexico, to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president there?
Well, it wasn't meant to be, and we're very friendly with her. She's a good woman, but the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And we could be politically correct and be nice and say, oh, yes, she is. No, she's very, she's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico. And I've asked her numerous times, would you like us to take out the cartels? No, Mr. President. No, please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. You know, they like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people, but the real number is 300,000 people. And we lost it to drugs, and they come in through the southern border, mostly the southern border. Plenty come in through Canada, too, by the way, in case you don't know. Yeah. But
I tried to tell you, Canadians. Oh, wait, you think that because your country's kind of white, that the U.S. can't aggress against you? Nah. I mean, why does Canada exist, really? I mean, like, be honest. Why does Canada exist, really? Well, Canada exists because at a specific time in history, the British Empire was strong enough that the United States didn't want to have war with it because it would be too risky, right? Too damaging. And the United States and the UK were roughly similar in power. And so it would be undesirable to try to annex Canada while fighting the British. And that was during the, 19th and 20th centuries as the United States was expanding across the continent. There were treaties signed with the British Empire and therefore Canada to protect its existence, right? And the British had the power to make any kind of American aggression undesirable. But now, I mean, the UK is basically a complete lapdog of the United States. So if the United States decides they want to annex Canada, what's stopping them? Something to really think about. Same thing with Greenland. What's stopping the U.S.? If we're back into imperialism, if we're back into might makes right, what's stopping the U.S. from attacking Mexico or annexing Canada and Greenland? And if you don't have an answer other than they won't do that, you're in trouble, because that's not an answer, man. Are the Europeans, are they willing to fight for Canada's independence? So, like, that's, are they going to do it? Probably not. But it is something to consider in the long term, because Donald Trump may not do it, but President Nick Fuentes might. President Tucker Carlson might. 20 years hence.
But they come in through the southern border, and something's going to have to be done with Mexico.
Why did you decide to do this morning?
Are you talking about calling you people or the shot?
No, taking out
I'm not sure.
Maduro.
I'm not sure which is worse, if you want to know the truth. I'm calling you. I haven't spoken to anybody else because Charlie Hurd has been a great friend of mine for a long time. He was with me when it was not fashionable. And those are the people I like. He was with me, Charlie, when it was not at all fashionable. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And your show is great. You're doing a great job. What a good team.
But I meant, why did you make the decision to take out Maduro this morning? And what was Maduro doing when our guys came in on him?
So we were going to do this 4 days ago, but the weather was not perfect. The weather has to be perfect, and we had just the perfect weather. We had, very good. A little bit few more clouds than we thought, but it was good. We waited 4 days. We were going to do this 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, and then all of a sudden it opened up, and we said go. And I'll tell you, it was just amazing. And what was he doing? He was in a very highly guarded, like a fortress, actually. He was in a fortress. That we had nobody killed was amazing. I think we had nobody killed, I have to say, because a couple of guys were hit, but they came back and they're supposed to be in pretty good shape. But that we had nobody killed, that we lost no aircraft. Everything came back. We got it all back. One of them was hit pretty hard, but a helicopter, but we got it back. It just was the right time to do it. We had to do it because it's a war. We're losing 300,000 people a year. We don't lose that much in a war, okay, if you look. And we had to do it. But he was in a house that was more like a fortress than a house. It had steel doors. It had what they call a safety space where it's, solid steel all around. He didn't get that space closed. He was trying to get into it, but he got bum rushed so fast, he didn't get into that. We were prepared. We had, massive blowtorches and everything else that you need to get through that steel, but we didn't need it. He didn't make it to that area of the house.
Mr. President, your war on narcoterrorism from our southern border and beyond clearly will save American lives. Moving forward for Venezuela, what do you think is next for the Venezuelan people now that you have removed Maduro so that he can face American justice?
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left or left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. You know, they were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people.
So I just saw this chat. Somebody traded on Poly Market, invested over $30,000 yesterday at Maduro's exit. The U.S. then took Maduro into custody overnight, and the trader profited $400,000 in less than 24 hours. Insider trading is not only allowed in prediction markets, it's encouraged. Maduro out by January 31st, 2026. Yes, that's 7 cents. I also had another tweet, and I said incredible, but there's another tweet. So here you can take a look at this. The other tweet that I saw, I revived from the ether, which is a liberal is someone who opposes every war except the current war and supports all civil rights movements except the one that's going on right now. All-time best post on this website. So liberals are going to support this. I want you to understand this. Like, the Democrats are going to be like, yay, thank you, Donald Trump.
Being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners and people from mental institutions and drug lords.
I think the thing that I think all of you need to like recognize is that Donald Trump has not lost his mind. Donald Trump has not lost his mind. He's just operating on an earlier set of assumptions. He's operating under the way the West became the most powerful countries in the world is because they did shit like this. Okay? That's why there's only one country that's gonna make it. And it's called China, because they don't get tricked by honeyed words. They do the honeyed words. They play the game. If you want to, treat them with respect and trade in a mutually beneficial way, they'll do that all day. They love that. But they're not dumb enough to allow themselves to be overwhelmed by the U.S., which is why I'm not an anarchist, and it's why I am, let's just say, much more sympathetic to a strong central vanguard organization. And I think we've seen the results. I think we've pretty much seen the results. Either you have the organization and the power necessary to stand up to the United States, which means a nuclear bomb, or as far as the United States is concerned, you don't even have a country. The United States' position now is if you have a nuclear bomb, you're a country. If you don't, you aren't. That's the way it goes. There's a reason they bombed Iran and not North Korea.
And everything. They sent about the hundreds of thousands of people into our country. And that is just unforgivable. That's why, he wanted to negotiate at the end, and I didn't want to negotiate. I said, nope, we got to do it. He was trying to negotiate at the end. You probably saw that. And trying hard to make a deal. And I said, this could have been a very foolish thing if it didn't work out. But I said, nope, we can't do it. What he did with drugs is bad. What he did with a lot of other things is bad. But what he did was sending hundreds of thousands of Tren de Aragua and drug dealers. They emptied out their jails into our country. They emptied out, if you think about it, they emptied out all of their mental institutions into our country. What he did there, and every other thing, is unforgivable.
Mr. President, you're already getting reaction from members of Congress on both sides. One Democrat, Jim McGovern, is saying that you did not get authorization from Congress. And he says Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela. Wanted to get your reaction to that.
Well, look, these are weak, stupid people, and they're trying to save themselves from almost destroying our country. If I didn't get elected, our country would not. I don't even think we'd have a country.
All right, chat.
We were heading down.
We have the indictment for President Maduro, the crimes they're accusing him of right now. Hold on, let me open these images. One of the laws that he's supposed to having broken is, quote, possession of machine guns and destructive devices. He was brought to New York, Nicolas Maduro, in relation to a drug trafficking crime for which they may be prosecuted according to the United States. They carried, knowingly used and carried firearms in the furtherance of such crimes, knowingly possessed firearms, and aided the abetted the use, carrying, and possession of firearms, to wit, machine guns that were capable of automatically shooting more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger, as well as destructive devices. So They're prosecuting Maduro because the president of a country had guns in his own country? What? I'm pretty sure the president of countries gets to have machine guns. I think that's like one of the benefits of being president, right? Like, people get to have machine guns around you. What the fuck are they talking about?
Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been captured and flown out of the country. Attorney General Pam Bondi says both of them have been indicted, and in a social media post says that they will, quote, soon face the...
Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. On behalf of the entire U.S. DOJ, I would like to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people, and a huge thank you to our brave military who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these two alleged international narco traffickers. They're not even charging them with like murder, so they have no evidence, basically. They don't even have one body. They're like, he owned a gun? What?
The full wrath of...
Oh, so it didn't take place with... I mean, like, what the fuck are we talking about? A new war just dropped? Yeah.
American justice. The Venezuelan vice president says that she has no idea where Maduro and the first lady are.
Faced with this brutal situation and this brutal attack, we do not know the whereabouts of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores. We demand immediate proof of life from the government of President Donald Trump. Proof of life for President Maduro and the First Lady.
President Trump says that he'll address the nation on the strikes from Mar-a-Lago later this morning. Right now, it's quiet in the capital of Caracas, just hours after the strikes. But earlier, explosions rocked Venezuela, knocked out power, and sent people running outside. And this strike was at La Carlota Air Base in Caracas.
All right, Chad, hold on. I think Donald Trump should be speaking soon, right? Donald Trump will be speaking soon. So we have this, just so you know. We're waiting. President Donald Trump press conference. We're not giving him the honorific of a title. Go ahead and pull this off and keep this playing.
Nick, we just heard from Issa Suarez speaking with some of her sources in country about the fear of what could come next because so many questions are unanswered.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through what we know has happened so far. Since about 1 a.m. local time, and these series of explosions rocked Caracas and other parts of Venezuela. Multiple helicopters seen in the air, and then clearly a U.S. Special Forces operation that removed Nicolas Maduro and his wife from what should have been their heavily fortified and secured premises in the capital there. Hard to understate quite what a move this is geopolitically by the Trump White House to remove the sitting president of a country which it considers to be a regional irritant. Startling. Successful, certainly. Daring, certainly as well. And also efficient, frankly, given what it seems the brevity, comparatively, of this operation and the impact that it is having. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, hinting that the indictments in the Southern District of New York court will be the ones that Maduro faced. He had a $50 million bounty on his head, seeking information that could lead towards his capture, and it may well be that the delay we're seeing since Trump's tweet in the early hours of this morning, his 74-word social media post that removed the extraordinary mystery, frankly, or the unresponsibility of exactly what was happening in the skies of Caracas, very quickly to explain that, as many suspected, it was the US military behind this. It now appears that potentially the delay may be about transferring Maduro inside American soil for when President Trump addresses the nation about this move, extraordinary as it is. But I think once perhaps for Trump allies, the exhilaration of removing Maduro, who has been an authoritarian dictator.
Chad, like, the operation was a success. I mean, I don't know what do you say success according to the principles of Donald Trump, not what I agree with or anything. They were able to bring in special operators, kidnap the president, and leave. Like, it's like rolling boxcar, right? Like, they hit the 1%, So now we live in a situation where the Venezuelan government is going to have a number of people that are competing for power. There's going to be a moment of confusion. There's going to be a moment of fear because all these leaders in Venezuela are going to think about their own safety, right? And in this moment of panic, are they going to be able to maintain control of the country?
Clearly planned his capture and abduction. The US military, very good at this sort of thing, be it bin Laden in Pakistan, Zawahiri, the Al-Qaeda leader in Afghanistan, Maduro, a man with lesser charges against him in Venezuela, but they fail repeatedly in what comes next. And I'm sure many in Venezuela will be deeply hoping that they now see some sort of future ahead of them where their economic and political problems become part of the United States' focus and they're not just left to see further collapse. A reminder, the United States, particularly the Trump administration, wants to see many of the hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans on US soil go home. And perhaps a calm and prosperous Venezuela would permit that to happen at a faster pace. But we are today in unprecedented territory in Moscow and Beijing. They will be looking at how their ally, Maduro, is suddenly whisked away from a place where he should have felt security of diplomacy, of the international world order.
I think the main thing that I would say is if I'm Xi Jinping, you know, I'm looking at this and saying we've entered a new period where China, if you're going to have allies, China has to become directly involved in their security, or else they're just not going to ally with China, right? Like that's it. Like, because basically there's only two ways to ensure your sovereignty at this point: a fully integrated air defense system or nuclear weapons that you actually have control over. Neither one of those things are cheap or easy, but it seems that the United States and its ability to suppress air defenses is qualitatively superior at such a point that small states are not able to stop U.S. attacks from the air.
He may now soon be in a New York courthouse to face drug charges.
Russia, as I said a moment ago, is now asking for immediate clarification on the U.S. claims that it has captured Maduro.
They'll probably get that.
Yeah. Peyton Walsh, thanks so much. Joining us now is CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak. Kevin, again, we're going to hear from the president at 11 a.m. Eastern, 3 hours from now. But I understand you have some new information about how this unfolded. What do you know?
Yeah, and what we understand is that the president gave the green light for this operation several days ago. That's according to people familiar with the matter. It was carried out by the elite Delta Force in the U.S. Army. That's the same group that captured Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi some years ago. So a highly trained a force that went in to capture Maduro. They were tracking his location with the assistance of the CIA. And we know that the president had authorized the CIA to operate covertly inside of Venezuela, some weeks ago. We saw some of what they were doing just this week when we learned about that strike on a dock facility.
Why is it hard to build nukes? Because it's not that it's hard, it just requires a large facility. And it requires a certain type of material. So typically, when you either try to build the facility or get the material, there is enough people out there to leak it. You have spies within government, and what it would take to procure that stuff, there's usually some sort of leak. Not always, but usually. And it just requires a large facility because you need to, have centrifuges to separate visible uranium from non-fissile uranium. So it's not that it's hard, it's just about getting the material and sufficient quantities. And then there is the delivery system, which requires, some expertise in rocketry. So those are some of the difficulties in that.
Basically, that agency was doing there. Now, the goal here is to try Maduro on explicitly from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who is citing that indictment in the Southern District of New York that was filed back in 2020. There was this bounty on Maduro, and what Bondi says is that both Maduro and his wife will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. But to be sure, there are plenty of questions here being raised by members of Congress. It does not appear as if the Trump administration briefed, the relevant lawmakers or the relevant committees before taking that action. And this morning, it appears that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been on the phone talking to senators to discuss some of what happened, and some of them are revealing a little bit about their discussion. Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, said that the strikes that occurred in Venezuela were intended to protect the U.S. personnel who were capturing Maduro, that the president was relying on his Article 2 authority, essentially his authority as commander-in-chief to conduct foreign policy, to carry out these strikes. And I think most critically, what Rubio told Lee was that he anticipates no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody. So this appears to be it for now, what we've seen overnight. This is really the culmination of this months-long pressure campaign. There was, I think, some misgivings on the part of the president some months ago about where all of this was leading. We heard that from officials, that he had some reservations that this could potentially all backfire if Maduro was ousted from power, some questions about whether this would be effective, but clearly he has put those to the side and given the green light to go ahead. I think President Trump is also of the era who will remember a mixed history of U.S. interventions in Latin America, including with the CIA. Today, 35 years exactly since the U.S. arrested the Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega at the Vatican Embassy in Panama. So, there is a long, somewhat mixed history for the president to look back on here, but clearly eager to proclaim success in this particular mission, and I think eager to show that justice will be served for what they claim is a drug trafficking charge. The objectives in all of this have always, in a way, led to regime change. That was what the president's ultimate goal was here. We heard that explicitly from Susie Wiles in that Vanity Fair interview. But you also saw a number of different sort of rationales that the president has laid out, whether it was curbing the flow of drugs, whether it was curbing the flow of migrants. You also hear the president talk quite a bit about the oil. Of course, Venezuela is sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves. And so I think when we hear from the president over at Mar-a-Lago down here in Palm Beach at 11 a.m., it's likely that we're going to hear sort of a combination of all of that. And certainly, I think the question of what happens next in Venezuela, what the president has been planning on that front, whether the U.S. sort of has any role or anticipates any role in stabilizing that country now that the leader has left, those will be critical questions that the president, I think, will need to answer for when we see him in a few hours.
And Democrats in the Senate are already asking those questions, as we're seeing on social media. As Kevin Liptak, thanks so much.
Sorry about that, chat. I'm here. Okay, we're here. The White House. I'm sorry, I'm here. We'll go back to Al Jazeera.
What does this, if this does go south, which it could, what does that look like?
It looks like... All right, but people want me to take a look at this clip from Hassan. Technically, the United States has invaded Venezuela. Well, I don't know. They didn't... Here's what I said. Chat, do you have my clip? Here's what I said. Can you give me my clip again? Oh, here it is. I posted it myself. I said, U.S. keeps bombing Venezuela, no ground invasion, CIA agents caught, no regime change, true wish casting. I think both. So far, that is true. The U.S. kept bombing. The U.S. did not do a ground invasion. They did a Delta Force special op. CIA agents have not been caught yet. And the regime has not been changed yet. So we're hanging on by a thread, chat. We're hanging on by a thread.
He's going to be presented with charges at some point in the near future, one would imagine. So there's the drug trafficking, and there's what the J.D. Vance just said was the stolen American oil. This is a foreign sovereign country, Venezuela, which has the largest proven oil reserves. We mentioned it. How is this?
Is it copium and institution pill to think a Maduro trial cooks rule of law and thus forward investment in the U.S.? No. Yes, that's idiotic. All that's happening is the mask is coming off. The United States has been doing this type of shit for Venezuela for 20 years. The only thing that's different is that they directly and openly did it with the U.S. military. They've been doing this type of shit for 20 years.
I think that the underlying point is President Trump means what he says. In the national security strategy released just a month ago, yes, President Trump and his staff said that they were going to establish the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which would be to keep the hemisphere free of any outside powers. And if you're going after that, Venezuela is the first place to start.
I'll give you the quote. To an assistance of your point, the quote from the National Security Strategy that was just put out in November, the U.S. must be preeminent in the Western Hemisphere as a condition of security and prosperity. And then for anybody who's, curious to read this, it's pretty short. It's 3-4 pages, and it tells you they feel that the U.S. needs to control pretty much everything that happens in the Western Hemisphere. So that's North America and South America. And they need to enlist friends, and they need to explain.
AOC posted, chat. It's not about drugs. If it was, Trump would have pardoned one of the largest narco traffickers in the world last month. It's about oil and regime change. And they need a trial now to pretend that it isn't, especially to distract from Epstein and skyrocketing healthcare costs. AOC has traditionally been quite good on foreign policy. I think we all yelled at her for her dumb Iron Dome vote. She literally got mad at me personally because I yelled at her. But it's okay. It's fine. She was right on opposing the Bolivian coup. She was right about Israel committing a genocide. And she's right about this.
They need to expand the friend list, as they write it, as they put it, right, to help them in their goal.
No, that's exactly what they say. And reading those words 6 weeks ago, you would say, yeah, this is ambitious, but do they really mean it? I think J.D. Vance's tweet really demonstrates that actually they mean this, that they really mean to exert U.S. power throughout the Western Hemisphere, not just in a way that the U.S. did during the Cold War, but during the 19th century. And I think that this is something that probably has, you'll think this is weird, Denmark worried because President Trump has
Greenland.
Exactly, has talked about Greenland as part of strategic resources and keeping Russia and Chinese influence from the hemisphere. They really seem to mean what they say. And I think that we should start taking them literally at their word.
Yeah, and maybe it should have Panama worried, because around the same time that Donald Trump was speculating, well, not speculating, but saying he wanted to take Greenland for U.S. national security interests, he was saying the same thing about the Panama Canal, where, to his liking, China has too much influence. Okay, these are things we'll come back to, but this already gives us a good idea of where we are from an analytical standpoint. Now, with Maduro now being captured, Al Jazeera's Teresa Bow takes a look back at his political career.
Nicolás Maduro started out as a bus driver and union leader, but his left-wing activism soon drew him close to his mentor, former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Maduro rose quickly through the political ranks, first to President of the National Assembly and then to Foreign Minister. And like the fiery Chavez, Maduro earned a reputation for being more diplomatic and conciliatory. What he lacked in academic skills, he made up for with mild manners, while rarely leaving the side of the popular president. But all that changed when Chavez became gravely ill with cancer, and Maduro was thrust into the role of head of the Council of Ministers. Shortly before dying in 2013, Chavez made it clear that Maduro was his chosen successor, and he was elected president by a slim margin. Either from the pressure of feeling the shoes of the charismatic Bolivarian revolution leader, or because of a sudden steep drop in the price of oil, Venezuela's main export, Maduro's personality seemed to change dramatically. He became louder and more eccentric. As the economic crisis escalated, opponents overwhelmingly won control of the National Assembly. Opposition demonstrations were met with brutal force and the imprisonment of their leaders.
I mean, this stuff is just normal in the U.S. Like, that doesn't look like brutal force to me. That's just like average American protest.
Hyperinflation and acute shortages of food, medicine, and basic goods fueled a mass exodus of Venezuelans.
Because of what? What caused the shortages?
Maduro announced he would rewrite the constitution to give himself additional powers, and he survived at least one assassination attempt. Despite pressure to ease economic sanctions if competitive opposition leaders were allowed to contest the presidency, Maduro refused. Opposition leader María Corina Machado was banned and chose Edmundo González Urrutia to run in her place. In July 2024, Maduro was re-elected in what were widely described as uncompetitive and non-transparent elections. The Electoral Council failed to show the tally sheets that proclaimed him the winner. A new wave of mass protests and repression began, followed by an unprecedented challenge to the president's power. Already tense tensions with Washington worsened, leading to crippling new economic and diplomatic sanctions. The U.S. also offered a $50 million reward for information that led to Maduro's detention. President Donald Trump accused him of being a narco-terrorist and deployed warships and fighter jets in the Caribbean, attacking boats allegedly transporting drugs to the U.S. Maduro denounced the U.S. strikes and resisted all calls to step down.
With Maduro now in American custody, who will take power in Venezuela? Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is next in line, according to the Constitution. She may continue Maduro's policies if she becomes president. Rodriguez is a 56-year-old lawyer and has been vice president since 2018. She served in ministerial roles under former President Hugo Chavez, but her career has risen with Nicolas Maduro's. In the long term, the path could be open for Maria Corina Machado. We mentioned her earlier.
What stops China from abducting Trump? The ability for the Chinese military to penetrate U.S. defenses and defeat the Secret Service. And then, of course, the United States has approximately 1,500 nukes or something.
Former diplomat. He stood in the election, but he lost the widely contested election to Maduro. And Venezuela's opposition leader, Machado, has released...
Oh, I'm sorry, chat. We have 3,800 nukes. 1,800 are deployed.
Statement, and she says this: Venezuelans, the hour of freedom has arrived. Nicolas Maduro faces international justice for the atrocious crimes committed against Venezuelans and against citizens of many other nations. In the face of his refusal to accept a negotiated solution...
Peace prize, by the way.
The U.S. government has fulfilled its promise to enforce the law.
What law?
The time has come for popular sovereignty and national sovereignty to govern in our country. We are going to bring order...
How is it national sovereignty to have the U.S. attack and kidnap him? How is that national sovereignty? What? I think one of the things that we need to understand is that we live in a world where nations are becoming meaningless. Like, people talk about how Asmongold is the biggest political streamer on Twitch when the majority of his viewers are not even American. So political streamer of what? European incels? You know what I mean? Like, there is no nation, there is no politics anymore. It is an international world we live in. So basically, the world we live in is America dictates what goes on in your country.
To free political prisoners.
And to defend Americans for a second, none of us wanted this war. We were not, I mean, the vast majority, 80% of Americans didn't want this. So we're not in control. There is no democracy here.
To build an exceptional country and to bring our children home, Venezuela will be free. End of statement. Maduro's capture by the U.S. triggered strong reactions across Latin America. On X, Argentinian president and strong Trump ally Javier Milei posted, "Freedom advances, long live freedom." Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, called it a flagrant violation of international law, which sets a dangerous international precedent. Lula has long warned against U.S. intervention in Venezuela. The president of Cuba, another U.S. adversary, accused Washington of a criminal attack, adding, "Our zone of peace is being brutally assaulted." Mexico's foreign ministry said the actions were a clear violation of the UN Charter and said it is willing to help facilitate dialogue. The outgoing leftist president of Chile, Gabriel Boric, condemned the U.S. military actions in Venezuela and called for a peaceful solution. Boric leaves office in March and will be replaced by Jose Antonio Cast, a far-right leader who supports Donald Trump. Al Jazeera's Daniel Schweimler has more from Buenos Aires. Daniel, we'll get back to the regional response in a moment. But first, what are you finding out on what's happening inside Venezuela, especially what's happening around the power structure? We know that constitutionally, the number two, the vice president, should, by all constitutional rights, take power. But we have no official confirmation that that has taken place yet.
And as I understand it, Delcy Rodriguez, when all this transpired in the early hours of the morning, was actually in Moscow, so not even in Venezuela when all this was happening. So whether she will be allowed to get back into the country, whether she would be allowed to stand, I think the whole nation, those Venezuelans in exile and those within the country, the international political community, all watching really and waiting to see what the United States does next. Until they know that, I don't think anybody really knows quite how to react. As we've been hearing from some of your previous speakers, really great uncertainty, various possibilities. We have to see how the people on the street in Venezuela will begin to respond to this. We're seeing polarization across the region, marked by some of those comments from regional leaders that you've just mentioned.
In full transparency to our viewers, we would, of course, much rather be reporting from inside Venezuela, the streets of Caracas and the regions of Venezuela, to see what's happening for ourselves. But we have been denied entry to the country, other foreign media outlets, by the Venezuelan authorities. Daniel, what is your best assessment and understanding of what's happening inside the country, excuse me, from a population standpoint? What are Venezuelans saying and doing from what you can pick up?
I mean, we've seen here there's a large Venezuelan part of the Venezuelan diaspora here in Buenos Aires, as there are in many of the cities and towns across Latin America. And this afternoon, what we're seeing is what they're calling a happiness rally, supporters of the U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, gathering around the obelisk, the main point of protest in Buenos Aires, to support that move. At the same time, others in Argentina, Argentines and Venezuelans marching to the Venezuelan embassy here to protest against that action. So I think that those kind of feelings, those sentiments would be reflected in the diaspora. And we're talking about several million people, 6-7 million Venezuelans who in the last few years have left the country for political, for economic reasons, to try to make a life elsewhere, all watching and waiting, bated breath to see what that next move will be. Will they be able to go back? That depends on who takes over. Will there be repercussions for those who supported the Maduro regime? We've heard the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, saying that he's sending troops to the border. That's to monitor the situation, but also because they fear there will be another great wave of migrants, people leaving the country, either to escape repercussions, depending on what their political stance was before this happened, or because they don't see a future, having held on for so many years. So a great deal of uncertainty, very difficult to pinpoint exactly which forces in this very polarized situation will gain dominance in these next few days and weeks.
Daniel, not to put too fine a point on it, for the moment, as far as we know, there isn't a countrywide uprising. The people of Venezuela, I know there's been one gathering and a counter gathering, but from if we look at this from a national perspective, the people of Venezuela are not rushing to the streets one way or another yet.
No, I mean, it's fair
because it's a foreign military bombing your country. I mean, being out on the streets is who are you countering?
Say that despite the opposition we often hear about and the millions who have left the country, Nicolas Maduro, up until the early hours of the morning when he was taken away by American forces, certainly enjoyed some support. I mean, that support, it seems, has been waning over the years. I mean, as did his predecessor, Hugo
Donald
Chavez.
Trump just posted
he did a great
this.
deal for the country.
Nicolas Maduro on board the USS Iwo Jima, which is an apt name of the ship, because the United States of America still to this day possesses the island of Iwo Jima. It is in control of Japanese sovereignty. Oh, here it is on Al Jazeera.
As you were speaking to us, the president of the United States posted on Truth Social a picture of Nicolas Maduro. We're all seeing it together for the first time. And the caption reads, Nicolas Maduro on board the USS Iwo Jima. And so you see Nicolas Maduro wearing sports gear, and I'm looking at this closely. So he's carrying a water bottle, and it does seem that he has glasses, or more likely something to
it's a
block
blindfold.
his view and his vision, something also over his ears. I don't know if that's because it's a military plane and therefore would be very loud and that would be typical, or whether it's because he's a prisoner and so he is not allowed to see or hear exactly what's happening around him. It's hard to see whether he's being restrained.
His senses are being deafened. Come on, guys.
Posted
which is
on the social media platform of the U.S. president. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, designed, I would imagine, to humiliate the president and his supporters, the supporters he still has within the Venezuelan military, among those people, to show how far he has fallen. He's a very vociferous speaker, very passionate. He certainly manages to whip up the crowds in support certainly in the run-up to this situation. So I would imagine, those photographs designed to humiliate him and show that he is very much a defeated former president.
I want to bring back in Paul Musgrave on this, who was speaking to us earlier in the hour and who's waiting in the studio with us for the press conference of Donald Trump, which could start momentarily. Paul, this is, I don't know what to say. This is wow.
Yeah. I think Daniel had it exactly right. This is an act of humiliation. This is an act, releasing this photo is designed to show that President Trump has brought to heel somebody who has been a major thorn in his side, who has challenged his authority, somebody that the United States went after during Trump's first regime. And it is designed to show that basically the United States is, in fact, running the Western Hemisphere, that the national security strategy and the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, that these are being carried out. And releasing this sort of photograph is not statesmanlike, it's not sportsmanlike, but is designed to show who's number one. And that's President Trump's modus operandi.
And this comes minutes off a tweet by the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. And one of the sentences in that message was the U.S. President, Nicolas Maduro, is the last person or the most recent person to realize that Donald Trump means what he says. A picture speaks 1,000 words. This one, I think, is headed for the history books.
I think this is pretty eloquent, and I think it shows that, the United States, for decades, really tried to have some sort of a fair or business-like approach to its dealing with Latin America, certainly a break with some of the worst habits. But coming back to something like this is an act designed to show that the United States is very involved, very powerful, and not willing to make friends or to broker any sort of compromise.
Yeah, Donald Trump did say in an interview to Fox News just a short while ago, this sends a message, this meaning the capture of Nicolas Maduro. I think the picture carries that message. Who's the message for, though?
So there's a lot of people for that this is for. For one, it's designed to show the people of Venezuela, who some of them do approve of this, that the United States has him. This is meeting Vice President Delcy Rodriguez's challenge for proof of life. Well, here's the proof of life. Here's the hostage. It's also designed to show an image to the United States that President Trump has got his man, that he really carried out a successful raid. And then I think that it also speaks to the rest of the hemisphere. There are, I like Daniel's word, polarization. There are countries, leaders, peoples in the Western Hemisphere who view Maduro as a dangerous socialist and somebody who has to be stopped. And then there are people who are very sympathetic to his anti-imperialist message. To the former group, it shows the United States is listening and they're on their side. And to the latter group, it says, watch out.
What does it say to Venezuelans?
To Venezuelans, I think it says that whatever else happens, Maduro is gone. And there's nobody, I think, with the same kind of charisma or legitimacy as a successor who could take Maduro's place as he took Chavez's place. And for Delcy Rodriguez, for instance, to be in Moscow when the event happened, it's not great optics. And who's really in charge? And after years of President Maduro saying that he and his military could stand up to the United States.
Press conference is now 37 minutes late.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. We'll speak again shortly. Let's look at the international reactions.
Is this proof
Maduro's
of life?
capture by the U.S. has sparked very strong reaction across the world. Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced the deployment of military forces to the Venezuelan border, calling U.S. actions an assault on the sovereignty of the region. Spain's foreign ministry offered to mediate and help find a peaceful solution. And the EU is calling for restraint. Its Vice President Kaja Kallas says the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be respected under all circumstances.
They just violated them blatantly.
Has condemned the U.S. move as an act.
I mean, if you're going to say that, then you have to say, and the United States' unilateral, seizure of a head of state is a violation of the UN Charter. Like saying we got to follow it while they don't follow it kind of means we don't have to follow it. And I'm sorry, if I'm Taiwan or I'm Ukraine and I'm looking at this situation, I'm going, well.
Of armed aggression, expressing concern over its destabilizing effects on Venezuela. Al Jazeera's Rory Challenge joins us now from London. Rory, what stands out to you in the international reactions so far? I'll preface this by saying that You know, one thing that you can detect from the reactions when a major event happens like this that challenges the sovereignty of an international leader is you can tell what countries think it's okay and what countries, you know, really do not want this to ever happen to them. And usually, if you read between the lines of those statements, you can kind of tell who's where.
If I was a foreign capital investor in the U.S., why would I trust my investors for safe?
Night and early today.
Because it's a dictatorship of. Oh, here we go. Sorry, chat.
Armed forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital, Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea was used. A spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. Lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that it was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, were sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position, but they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have. And you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. We don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And
so he wants a U.S. occupation regime?
Because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty.
I'm going to pause it just for 1 second to say this is why people who say that we should not run for office are fucking stupid. The American empire is not collapsing tomorrow. It is the most powerful organization in the world as far as ability to project military force. It is our duty as American left-wingers to organize and win power and rein in the empire. We have that responsibility. And anybody saying, oh, no, let's not do that, That's electoralism, is literally a traitor to the global south. We need to go in there and bring American forces home and dismantle the Pentagon and invest in our own country. And all right-wing populism is a fucking joke. All right, Donald Trump said he was going to be the peace president. This is Hillary Clinton's wildest imperialist fantasy coming true. This is neocon plus plus plus. So get your fucking shit together. And you know what? I want to point this out, and I'm going to point it out right now. Look what happened. Graham Plattner is out there right now condemning this action. Graham Plattner is calling it illegal. Half the liberals are saying it's good. Graham Plattner is out there saying it's bad. Something to keep in mind about people's ability to judge whether someone has changed or not.
Justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland.
And AOC is condemning it too.
We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. Decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time.
Because
they were pumping almost nothing
their country
by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure.
Denmark, you better get nukes.
And start making money for the country.
We're coming for Greenland.
And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave. We needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to a second wave, a much bigger wave. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people in Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans, hundreds, thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might.
Of course, that's total bullshit. It is, the Sackler family billionaires that spread Oxycontin all over the place in this country, and they got a slap on the wrist from Trump. So the people who actually kill Americans go free, and we use the American deaths to lie so we can steal some other country's oil. What a disgusting display.
Presented in a court of law, and I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs, inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States. Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide, and he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complex. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal. Not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard. because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore.
Why is Hegseth's suit so small?
Restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters. They're walking their
He's standing like
children,
a child wearing their
wives,
first suit at Holy Communion.
Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now. And crime is down. We've just sort of started weeks ago, but crime is down now.
He's not been allowed to have his morning whiskey.
And the governor of Louisiana called, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very part of Louisiana. And we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost New Orleans. It's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. We don't need it. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of.
Why the fuck is he rambling about other bullshit instead of the war he's starting?
Crime-ridden mess.
Are we invading Venezuela to seize the government? Or are we?
But the gangs
what the fuck is happening?
They sent tortured and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua, and they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people. And now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered, left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. Mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets it. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, so we didn't do anything. I would have done so. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. They used those weapons last night, potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border.
I can't believe they used their weapons when we were bombing their capital.
All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore.
Unethical and illegal to fight the United States, even if we're bombing you.
And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal.
The Monroe Doctrine
superseded it by a lot.
We just control Latin America because we
They now
can.
call it the Donroe Document. I don't know.
The Donroe Doctrine.
Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen.
All right, so if you are in Latin America, America's foreign policy is we have military dominance over you. What are you going to do about it?
So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance. Everyone's coming back to the future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to national security. Just like tariffs, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power, and we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan
American sovereignty is when we steal your oil.
The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options.
What is China thinking right now? What China's thinking about right now is how fast they could develop their 6th generation fighters, their hypersonic missiles, their drone swarms. They're laying the heels of 3 more nuclear powered aircraft carriers. They're developing drone technology, laser technology, tanks, rockets, amphibious vehicles. They are developing friendly wingman drones. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking, how do we build a credible conventional military deterrent? They're also building renewable energy, solar panels, wind farms, nuclear power plants, so they can remove their reliance on American Middle East imported oil. They're building hydroelectric dams. They are building the infrastructure necessary to electrify their economy so they don't rely on fossil fuels, and therefore cannot be blockaded by the United States. Like that's what they're thinking, and they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars in upgrading their military. Can your anarchist collective come up with $500 billion, please?
Until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied.
Thank you.
All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone, and Venezuela people are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's fantastic. I've worked with a lot of generals. Worked with some I didn't like, some I didn't respect. There's some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him. And I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. finally a commander-in-chief, and the American people. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the precision of this. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly American warriors are second to none. The best in the world and the best. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those our warriors are the elite of America. And again, President Trump, no other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, and no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership and resolve. Powerful combination, the world. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice anywhere. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all in the middle. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, so they didn't, and he effed around. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing
oil that was stolen from us. This is Operation Oil Theft. How dare you steal the oil underneath your ground? Jesus Christ, dude. Like, can I just say this? If you're an American, there is a temptation, and a lot of conservatives think like this, to think, yeah, haha, we stole their oil, like a bully stealing a kid's lunch money. We're just gonna get away with it. We're gonna steal all the lunch money. We're gonna enjoy it. It's fun. It's sadistic. Yes, it's not fair, but what are you gonna do about it? I get your lunch money. I get to buy the brownie. Right? Like, that's how a lot of conservatives think. And I want you to understand something, chat, that we don't live in this world anymore. This maybe could have flown 15 years ago. Well, we now have a world power called China, who is in direct competition with the United States of America. And the world is not under an American boot. The United States does not have the wealth. It doesn't have the population. It doesn't have the economy big enough to dominate the entire world through force. We were able to dominate through soft power, and people are going to see this, and a lot of people are going to accommodate it, and they're going to surrender to the U.S., and they're going to become more compliant with the U.S. But for the most part, there's another bid out there. And as China, and if you're China, you look at this situation and you say, we have to become more aggressive. We have to build up even more. We need to start building military bases in our allies. The more aggressive the United States gets against China, the more China has to start inserting military presence in their allies to prevent acts like this. If you're a middling power, you have to consider we need to get nuclear weapons. I'm sure there's having conversations right now in the Mexican capital saying, should we get nuclear weapons? Should Mexico develop a nuclear bomb? In Iran, they're saying we should develop a nuclear bomb. And so now we have more and more countries proliferating nuclear weapons. We have the United States seen as a aggressive bully, and countries of the world are either going to have to accept that you are nothing more than a puppet and a servant of the United States, or that you develop your own credible deterrent to stop the United States. Because there's one country the United States is not bombing, and that's North fucking Korea. And the North Korea is allying with China and Russia. And guess what happened last year? Their economy grew. That's the reality. Their fastest growth in 8 years. They're not being attacked, and their economy, for the first time in a long time, is starting to improve.
American deterrence and dominance. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department, 26, and under President Trump. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman Raisin Kane. A few more details.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was precise and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades' experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our Special Operations Force, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years' experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last. This was an audacious operation that only the United States, it required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose, to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopter. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board, and both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr.
Well, I don't have much to add to it. Maduro was the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration. None of those three recognized him.
Wow, guys, America said that. It's not just America saying it. America said it.
With a $50 million reward, which I guess is $50 million. And yeah, exactly. But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities, provided multiple very, very, very generous offers, and chose instead to act like a wild man. Chose instead to, and the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following: you have a guy. Like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with.
By the way, that didn't happen from Maduro. That happened 20-something years ago.
And try to hold them for hostage and trade.
Like, what are we talking about?
The Biden administration basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president, the 47th president of the United States, is not a gameplay. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. If he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national
Rubio's ears are the biggest ears I've ever seen in my life.
There's a president of peace, by the way.
His ears are the biggest I've ever seen.
This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another.
I can't stop looking at them.
Living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems. And but I think that
he's got the lobes for business,
Chad. The president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games.
You can hear what I'm saying right now.
President's in office because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope
I'm only 3,000 miles away.
I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving.
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil company. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, and we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what but we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous. It could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. They stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people
would run Venezuela.
Well, it's largely going to be for a period of time the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead. I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership.
If I'm Lula, I'm building a nuke.
A lot of bad people.
If I'm Brazil, I'm building a nuke.
That shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance.
I don't know what else to say.
Take over for Maduro. So you can look at and others. We have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track.
I'm calling G.
Make a lot of money for the people.
And I'm saying,
and give people
do you want to build a base in Brazil?
For people in our country.
Hand me a nuke.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
So the vice president is surrendering?
A couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today, he said he's not concerned about anything to him in the aftermath. Just what your message is
about he has cocaine mills, factories where he makes cocaine. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Wait, who?
Just what your message is.
Oh, he's threatening Colombia? He's threatening Colombia's president?
Cocaine mills, factories where he makes cocaine. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about
a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night? We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point. You know, we had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
This all play out live. What was
Sleeping. It's fucking night.
Was there any Maduro pushback?
What could have happened? He was trying to get into a safe place. You know, the safe place, all steel, and he wasn't able to make it to the door. Guys were so fast. They went through the oppositions, and there was a lot of opposition. We're wondering, did we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to his safe, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it. Go ahead, finish.
Exactly.
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, without necessarily a plan afterwards,
Not with
did
me.
that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's why we had different presidents. We've had a perfect track record of, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted.
We have to rebuild Venezuela's infrastructure? Look at our infrastructure. What is he doing?
Dangerous thing to take out of the ground.
Now we're rebuilding Venezuela's infrastructure? Bro, can we get a fucking bridge?
It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
We're going to be taking a lot of money out.
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil
China
and drugs?
and Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're not going to say we're not going to get it. In other words, we'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because they're infrastructure. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil.
We're going to be selling oil to China.
Many of whom are using it now. But I would say many more will come.
In other words, chat, Americans are not even going to get this oil. The oil is going to be sold to You're going to be bidding against China to buy the oil? So you're... We're not even getting anything.
Mr. President, are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that...
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly when you look at the border from 2020. What they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela's military
They're
troops
going
to
to be a
provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. A vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president. I guess the president, she was sworn as, she had a long time. We'll do whatever I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back.
He's gonna deport all the Venezuelan diaspora in America that are celebrating. He's gonna deport them back.
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world.
All right, chat. Nicolas Maduro is a criminal authoritarian dictator who has oppressed the people of Venezuela for years. He is not the legitimate head of government. Undoubtedly, the rule of law and democracy have broken down in Venezuela, and the people of that country deserve better. Donald Trump has the constitutional responsibility to follow the law and protect democratic norms in the United States. That is what putting America first requires. The Trump administration has not sought congressional authorization for the use of military force and failed to properly notify Congress in advance of the operation in Venezuela. Promotion of security and stability in a region requires more than just military force, as we painfully discovered in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, so basically he's saying, but the rules, you gotta follow the rules of letting me vote yes.
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about, because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco?
They were, their whole spy agency, all that were, I mean, they basically, it's amazing. This poor took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from us. Yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
The answer is yes. No, we haven't. No.
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within, or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S.
She's sitting there crawling on her hands and knees, just bootlicking Trump, and he's like, she couldn't be president. She doesn't have the respect.
Venezuela.
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial, so it's not going to cost us anything.
Hey, we're gonna steal their oil, is what he's saying.
We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what that was happening, and you don't want to have
incredible.
That. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil
companies. Do you guys remember when I had arguments with people like Vosh and Sock Dunn Left, or whatever his fucking name is, and all these people about wars for oil and American foreign policy is dog shit? Remember these guys? And they were like, they were like trying to be a pro-American empire, but leftistly. And now Trump just comes out and says everything openly. Yeah, we're stealing their oil.
Go in, they're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Going to send in U.S. military.
Speak to Maduro about when
Well, I don't want to get into the conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah. Well, I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina, and we are doing very well with that.
I think the main thing that I would say is it's just like Donald Trump once again is a complete and utter moron.
And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned, if
there's really nothing more to say.
He was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly, and there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon. Well, no, we're going to have presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground, and that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela, and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll
Putin.
go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with Hay. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. I thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be. One of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not mine. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions, we send them a lot of things, missiles, and they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. If I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much, everybody.
Just right now, John Fetterman posted, grateful for our U.S. military personnel that handled these orders in Venezuela with precision. I maintain that we have the strongest, most lethal military in the world. Today proves that even more. I said, quoting Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, just to remind you that there is no difference between Republicans and centrist Democrats when it comes to supporting America's illegal wars. All right, everybody. I'm going to call it there. We had a nice little bonus stream this Saturday. I'm going to try to figure out more what's going on. We'll be back. I'm sure there's going to be further ramifications. It seems to be like the vice president of Venezuela may be in on it and might be, agreeing basically to administer the American demands. So we'll have to see if that, the people of Venezuela kind of accept that or what goes on from here. Do you think a New York City judge throws out the case against Maduro? They're going to pick a fucking CIA judge. American intelligence has judges that they can put on trials like this. Like the judicial system is not independent like you seem to think it is. They're not going to administer this in like a lawful fashion. It's going to be administered as a kangaroo court. They're not going to leave the, it is what it is. All right, chat. I'm going to send guys, gals, non-binary pals over to Dennis's stream. Because it's obviously this is an incredibly fucked up situation. So I'm going to be watching. I'd also like to, take some time off. This was my 7th day in a row streaming. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. We'll be covering this all this week and the growing ramifications. 2026 is off to a fucking wild start. What the fuck is that? We'll show them tomorrow because I'm chat. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe. Solidarity forever. That's how socialism wins. And say hi to Denbo for me. Here's all my links if you're new to the stream. This is the Morning Politics Space, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern to 12 noon Eastern, or 7 a.m. Pacific to 12 noon Pacific, and 10 a.m. Eastern to 2 p.m. Okay, I can't do time anymore. All right, everybody, stay safe. Tomorrow's Sunday. I'll see ya. Peace out. Solidarity forever. Say hi to Dennis for me. Okay, whatever. Time is hard. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.